The whole idea of Not Your Parents' Church comes out of, looks like this may not, well, I think I've got it wrong. So there we go. It comes out of the idea that many of our youth today, those under about 35 years old, are not going back to the same church they grew up in. Statistically, there's a whole host of studies on those done by the Southern Baptist Church, Lifeway, on the Family, Barna. There's actually about 8 different studies, and it's showing that roughly about 75 to 85%, and it depends on which study you're looking at, of the people that, of the children that are raised in church, go there on a regular basis, are not attending church when they get to be 19 years old. The worst part of that study is they still haven't come back at age 35, so there's really a pretty significant problem that exists there. This demographic shift that we've got going on is taking the largest people group from, and when we say that, we're talking about the boomers, really, my generation, and it was a specific group of people that thought alike and did things alike, and there's about 74 million people in that group. A large percentage of those attend Christian churches. The millennials have actually got a bigger group, and that's today those that are about 19 to 37. And so we've always had people retire, and we've always had people, that are kind of been around the barn quite a few times, don't have a lot of laps left. They're in the 7th inning of the game. But we've always had people coming in to replace those, as we do today. The problem is they aren't going back to church. So we've got a whole lot of people going out the back door and not very many people potentially coming in the front door. From an economic standpoint, this is a very depressing next 2 slides, and then I'm going to get into some other things after that. But in 2010 income, the baby boomers had 70% of all the income in the United States. So that group of baby boomers is very, very strong. They happen to have supplied about 90% of all the income to Christian churches nationwide. So they had a lot of income, they give away a lot of income. In 2016, that group, which is in the blue, drops down to 20% of all the income in the country, and the millennials go from 5% to 55%. So there's an incredible economic change that's in the air that has an incredible potential impact on churches. It doesn't necessarily have to, but if where all your income is at is starting to retire, and the ones that are gaining all the income aren't going to church, we have a problem. And I've studied millennials extensively over the last 4 or 5 years. I think I've read, literally hundreds of documents on it. I've read every major study that's been done, and I think most of the books that have been written. But the thing that I continually run into is people say, well, if we don't want to kowtow to millennials, or we don't want to do things the way they might want to have it done just to have them come to our church. And I understand a little of that philosophy, but we're going to talk about that in some detail today, because the fact is, when you lose your base of giving and don't have anything come in after that, there is a problem, and it's just one that is real. How big is the problem? This is kind of interesting. In 2010 sources, that little green part on the left side, you can probably barely see it from there, is the giving from millennials in 2010. I had to exaggerate the giving to get it to show up on the graph. At the actual number, it was just a tiny line. It's not even correct the way I did the graph. The blue is obviously the giving of the baby boomers and above. The chart to the right is 2016 sources, and it's assuming a growth of millennials, but it's also showing what happens with the baby boomers not having the income. And that red is the shortfall. That red on a nationwide basis is about $80 billion. So we're really talking about a pretty significant area there. That's our start for saying we should build a lot of buildings. I say that jokingly. So who is this group of people? 40% of them are minorities. They're probably the most racially diverse group that's in the history of our country. A very, very educated group. 60% have college degrees. They are digital natives. And now there's a lot of other factors that are in there, but there are three that I really want to talk about because they're incredibly important to look at as we go through this process. They are very open to change. They're very connected. They're social animals. I have 6 of them that I raised in my family, and I understand them fairly well from that standpoint too. The oldest of those is actually past that group. He's 40 years old this month, but he is absolutely in that millennial area. And it's interesting. The change that is interesting to them, and if you go into a lot of churches today and you change almost anything, the order of service, we changed the songs a little bit. We only had 3 songs instead of 4. Those kind of things, that will upset the cart in many, many churches in our country today. This group would like to come into the service and have change every week. Something different. They'd like to be surprised. They'd like to have it absolutely not be the same. So you've really got an interesting problem here because we've got one group that doesn't want to change at all and sees change as a pretty negative thing. Another group that would like to just see something different every time they walk around the block. And so that's, and we're going to talk about how you solve that. But here's some of the thinking about Christianity. 70% of that says church is irrelevant. 65% rarely attend church. 3.5% attend church on a regular basis. Now, take that 3.5% of 80 million people, you've got about 2.5 million people that are going to fill the seats of about 40 million people as they go down the other side. And that is just a big problem. It's a huge problem to try to assess.